over me.
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Friday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I'm thrilled that you're here, and welcome to Friday. You have made it. Your weekend can now commence. And thank you for spending your Friday night here with us on the Paranormal Portal, wherever you're coming at us from, whether you're on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream, or joining us here on YouTube for the live presentation or the live stream simulcast as well at the same time. And if you're not seeing us but would like to, head over to youtube.com/paranormalportal and you can catch the live stream now as it's happening, or just sit back where you're at, light a candle, turn down the lights, get a nice refreshment, and kick back and enjoy the show, because however you want to listen, it's fine with us as long as you're listening. Before I go any further, let me welcome my good friend and co-host of the show, Mr. Don Longbeard. Welcome to the show, Don.
Morning.
Morning. Where the hell are you?
You know, for some reason, I'm a working guy, so my boss at work every day is, morning, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, you know, if you could tell me to go jump in a lake, I'll see you later.
Yeah,
we got a beautiful lake. Go ahead.
Yeah, get out. That'd be nice. No, actually, speaking of mornings, I had a really early one. My cat has now decided that 4:30 a.m. is my new wake-up time.
Oh, poor baby.
I know. It's just like, oh, my God, you got to be kidding. And he's got this most obnoxious meow. It's like, meow. and he's like right up in my face doing it. It's like, you can't sleep through that. You can't ignore it. So, and then once I'm up, it's really tough for me to get back to sleep. So it's been an incredibly long day for me, but I did get to see the sun come up and enjoy the dawning of the day. So I got that going for me. So, how you been, Don? Good?
Yeah, I've been good. I'm glad this week's over already.
Yeah.
Or at least, well, for some people.
I hear there's another one on the way, for what it's worth.
You hate it.
They keep making them, as far as I know.
Monday's a hell of a way to spend 1/7 of your life.
It is. It's just wrong, isn't it? But at least you got Friday and Saturday and Wednesday nights here on the portal
my escape.
to kind of offset it. And hope you guys out there are doing wonderful as well and have a great weekend ahead of you. It's cooling off down here, up here in the upper tip of Idaho, which is awful nice because it's been so incredibly hot.
Oh, God, yeah.
And hellish that, no rain yet for a long time. For how long has it been since we had rain done?
Weeks.
Yeah, weeks.
Couple weeks.
Not months. Oh, yeah, you guys had a sprinkle when I was gone or something.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that.
It was a big sprinkle.
I know the fire hazards are climbing around here, and the sky is hazy, so there's fires going somewhere around us.
That is true.
A lot of red sunsets lately, but anyway, what do you do? Let's just enjoy ourselves here on the portal, and tonight we have a very special show for you. We have brought back an amazing friend and guest and incredible researcher and into phenomena that I'm absolutely passionate about, but you don't hear enough of it. But we were lucky enough to find Robyn, and she's been great in agreeing to be on the show, because this is a subject that I'm absolutely passionate about, which is the other kind of cryptids that you don't hear as much about in terms of little people, proto, pygmies, these other hominid type beings that are out there that, everybody hears about Bigfoot, everybody hears about UFOs, everybody hears about ghost stories, but these other things that are out there are very much less reported, and I don't think that they're any less prevalent, but there's not a lot of people willing to come forward and say, look, this has happened, because I think people will dismiss it right out of hand, or that's their fear. But welcome back to the show, Mrs. Robyn Moonshadow. We are thrilled to have you back. Thank you for being here.
Hello there. Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
Oh yeah, well you've made it a real pleasure, and thank you so much for being. Now, where are you? Where is your house? Where are you located? I mean, don't give me your address, but we don't have to get real personal here. But
It's 666 Mockingbird Lane.
what part of the country are you in?
Well, I live in Canada, in the
Right.
province of Ontario,
Ontario.
about 4 hours from Toronto.
Okay, so you're over on the eastern side. Is it more mid than eastern? Are you which side of Toronto are you on?
More southern.
More southern. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's what time is it where you are right now?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Wow.
And see, that's the kind of commitment.
1 in the morning.
Yeah, that's just it. It's and I thank you so much because I know it's over here we take it for granted that everybody's way far ahead of us, and so it's 10 p.m. here. It's not as much of a sacrifice, but for you to come on at 1 p.m. is a huge deal. So that really means the world. Thank you so much for doing that.
You're very welcome. I'm a bit of a night person, anyways.
Oh, good. And I've noticed that in a lot of the paranormal community that we are night people. I think it's pretty universal, nearly.
Yep, I agree with that. Everyone that I've been able to talk to is also up at odd hours.
We enjoy our nights, that's for sure.
It's like, hey, are you up? And you know they're up.
Yeah, exactly. And we sleep part of the day away, unless you have a cat like mine, which makes sure that I'm also up in the early odd hours of the morning. But you've been on the show before, and we had a really great discussion about proto pygmies and little people. Could you, for those that may be new to hearing about you and what you do, could you give us a nutshell summation of what it is you research?
I research all cryptids and I also do the paranormal. I've been doing this since I could read, actually, since I was 5 or 6 years old. And if I couldn't read the book, my sister was good enough to read them for me. So they're really, besides being a veterinarian, there isn't anything else that I've wanted to do.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, I research proto pygmies, which are diminutive little people, above a foot high to 3 feet high, and they're categorized as gnomes and or leprechauns. Of course, that's part of the gnome family. I also look into goblins and trolls.
Wow, that is really cool. Now, of those
Yeah,
phenomena,
and Bigfoot. The only thing I don't do is dogmen. My elders, because I'm First Nations, and strongly advise me just to leave that alone. I may talk about it just a little bit, but they believe that if you talk about them, it brings them to you, and of course we don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, so we just kind of don't talk about it.
right? Well, that's great
It's like
advice too.
so yeah.
Right. I know that the same is held in demonic practices or research. That many believe that by naming demons, you're calling them to you, and I agree. I think that once you vibrate something into reality, you're giving it a reality and a magnetism and drawing something to you. So I think that's very wise. Yeah, and everything I've heard about the dogmen is that they're incredibly aggressive, and you don't really want to meet one anyway.
No, you don't want to mess with dogmen. No,
Yeah.
no, because they're. I will read about them, but that's about as far as I go. I know that they're volatile, and you never know what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. They are
It depends
unpredictable.
on their mood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's much like any other wild animal. I mean, you could see a bear in the wilderness and it's fine, or you could see a bear in the wilderness and suddenly you're desperately climbing up a tree because you're on the menu. And I
Yep.
imagine it's very same as I assume like the Bigfoot, for instance. I assume that they're maybe higher cognitively functioning, and generally they just want to be left alone. Whereas I think that dogman is much more feral. You don't hear about a lot of people getting attacked by them, but there's no shortage of absolute intimidation and just horrible fear that's generated by them, so that if you did challenge them, you'd be looking at a lot of trouble. So yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yes.
Now,
Yes, and with what it is, and because we don't know exactly what it is, it's always best just to be careful and just let it rest.
yeah, I agree. Now you've been pretty active yourself lately. What have you been up to?
Oh yeah, I've been active since the summer. Well, Paula, who is well, there's been four of us girls. We've been friends since we were kids, and I asked Paula if she wanted to be one of the admins for the group, and she said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And she's more into the paranormal side. And we were talking. She said, "Let's go to Rockford, abandoned asylum in Kingston, which is where she lives." And we went there,
Oh wow.
and we did check, and double check everything before we left. And of course, when we got there, nothing worked. I even had a bit of problem with my phone, so we had to improvise. So we did a walk around, and then when we got back to her house, everything worked fine. And we were able, yeah, and we were able to capture some images from the windows, which is on the Facebook Strange Realms group.
Yeah, that was really cool, and I imagine that the energy in that place must have been just intense.
It was very calm during the day, and then when it started to get dark, it's how a lot of things happen when you're dealing with asylums, where the patients are more active at night, because I don't believe that changes even if they're on the other side.
Is that
They're
true? Is
at night.
is that true in living people as well? That in insane asylums, there's a different behavior at night.
Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
wasn't aware of that.
And what people say about people are more active during a full moon is true, because a moon affects the water, and we have such a large percentage of water in our own bodies. So it would be natural that it affects us as well. And with insane people, it might be even more intense.
Yeah, I have a background in corrections from ages ago, and I can tell you that full moons were always incredibly interesting nights, because that was when a lot of the real big problems would happen, and it was like this specific group of people would be so much more susceptible. And I don't know if it had to do with cognitive functioning, that they were much more prone to react to that moon cycle or not. But man, yeah, we had all kinds of problems on full moons.
Yeah, I've heard it even mentioned at the hospital one night. I can't remember the reason why I was there. It might have been for my granddaughter, but one of the security guards was saying, we're going to have a lot of full chairs tonight because it's a full moon.
Wow. I bet that's true, yeah. A lot of stupidity going on all over the map. Definitely.
More light.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you also had been out on a research venture recently as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, me and Dwight Campbell from Dirty South Squatching went up to the Adirondacks in New York State for a few days of squatching and hobbiting, and we weren't disappointed. We were all over the place. It was a great trip. My first day out, and I go into the bush. I found and I'm just delighted by it, a proto pygmy footprint down by the creek.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and I do have an image of that.
Stared at it for a moment in almost disbelief, because I'm like, I want to find my own tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I love and appreciate that so many Bigfoot researchers bring me tracks and pictures, but it's a little different when you find something of your own.
Right. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I was there, and I was like just staring at it for like a minute, and I'm like, wow, and I took a picture of it.
Right. I got to pull that up here. Hold on a second, because I want to show our viewers on YouTube, and I'll send it to Don as well to post in the chat room. And is there anybody in the TFR chat room right now, John?
There, you know what? Drone's not even in there, I don't think.
Wow, it's really quiet over there. Okay.
We do have a Matrix Assassin. Ken's in there. Alan Allman.
Jeez. Sorry.
Alan's in there. Hey, Alan.
Alan's in there. Sorry,
Wrong one.
I hit the wrong one. Sorry about that.
Hey, Robin, though, when you go hobbit hunting, like you did in the Adirondacks, what are you looking for? I mean, we know what Bigfoot hunters are looking for. You know, we're looking for structures and stacked tree or stacked sticks and stacked rocks and things like that. What are you looking for specific to your hobbiting, your hobbit hunting?
Well, first we have to find out if there's actually been a sighting or maybe legends
Mm-hmm.
of little people being in the area, and of course there was, uh, right along with Bigfoot. And then we look for food sustainability, food, water, those type of resources, because little people are people,
Mm-hmm.
and they live in the old way. So we look for mushrooms, flowers, and there's even wild rice there. We have wild rice here too, but of course I was glad to see that there was wild rice because both Bigfoot and little people eat that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was fish because I know that they fish,
Mm-hmm.
and enough wildlife to sustain them if they eat that specific type of little person eats deer
Hmm.
or squirrels or
Right.
whatnot. Like a lot of them are vegetarian, but it's about equal that they eat meat.
So they're more of an omnivore, opportunivore, depending on seasons, I guess, too. Then, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, are you familiar? Do they build any kind of structures? Like with Bigfoot, you look for the tree breaks or the twisting of the trees, or perhaps even structure. Is there any such things associated with little people, proto pygmies?
Well, they live primarily underground.
Okay,
There are a few that are wander around and sleep like wherever.
okay. So
So the area is, well, it's the Adirondack Mountains, so yeah, it can sustain little people as well as Bigfoot.
hmm but there's no structures or things that they build that would be a key that they might be in the area.
No.
Okay.
Huh. Interesting.
Now I got the picture up on the screen, and could you explain what it is we're looking at here?
Well, that footprint is about 3 inches long.
Okay.
I
Wow.
didn't think to put my foot beside it or, uh, get the measuring tape out, which I did have with me. But my own excitement, I was like, "Whoa!" And it was down by the creek bed,
Uh huh.
and you can see there is a heel and the little toes on top.
Right. Yeah, it is. It
Oh.
Yeah,
is very discernible. Yeah. And was it only
it is
one?
the only one I found.
Okay, so only one print. Okay. Do you think that
Yeah,
they're
it went from leaves into the mud.
okay?
So I think he might have traveled along the sticks that were there.
Okay. So do you think that
I wouldn't
they
have.
very consciously do their best to camouflage their prints as well, much like Bigfoot is rumored to do?
I believe most of them do.
Okay. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
think so too.
They would prefer to be left alone
Mm-hmm.
unless they want to help you.
Right. Okay. No, that's a
Because
fantastic
yeah,
image. That's really cool.
they're only seen if they want to be seen.
Now, does that mean that they hide, or are you saying that it's more of a dimensional thing? How do
They
you mean that?
they hide from us.
Okay, so they are
Yeah.
very physical beings in your summation, and they just are very good at not being seen if they choose to, but they will reveal themselves when they choose.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I know other researchers believe that they are interdimensional beings,
Okay.
but I look at it scientifically. So sorry, scientifically,
Mm-hmm.
um, they don't. To me, they don't disappear and reappear because there are too many tales of them being able to run so fast because they are shorter to the ground
Right.
and
Yeah.
they can just hide in bushes and you'll never see them.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And I would agree with you. And I think the idea of things being able to appear and disappear at will, more etherically, to me is a very exciting idea. But I don't pretend to subscribe to that. in reality. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I just don't understand the dynamics of that. And I agree that I look at it as they're physical until it's been very well shown that they're not or able not to be.
Right. I agree with that too. It's like, well, let's prove it's real, and then everything else is secondary.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry about the semantics of what they're capable of.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure that we come to some kind of conclusive evidence that at least that they're here. Then we can build on it. And
Yes.
I think that's the
Yeah,
right
and
approach. Yeah.
what would be the purpose of them being able to disappear and reappear? Like, what would be the purpose of that? They take on bears. Puckwudgies have killed giants. They're very unafraid
Mm-hmm.
of their surroundings because they know it's so much better than we do.
Right. Yeah. That's their home.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like
So,
I know my home much better than an invader will, and I have a better chance of navigating it successfully than the person coming in.
exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree with that,
Yeah.
and I think you're
Yeah,
absolutely
they're
right.
always one leg up on us, like so many animals.
What was that? I'm sorry.
They're always one leg up on us,
Oh, yeah.
like so many other animals. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I found that print on my first hike out,
Right on.
and
Oh.
then on our way back, I actually heard a bear.
Oh, geez.
I heard it snorting from far away, and Dwight Campbell was told that there had been a bear in the camp a couple weeks before, and I was like, okay. No, I'm not scared of bears, but of course they're bigger than me. They make me a little nervous.
Right. Yeah. No
And
kidding.
it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I heard a bear a couple campsites down from mine,
Oh, jeez.
and I was like, great.
Oh. How long were you out
Yeah.
there?
We were up there for 3 or 4 days.
Oh, wow. That is
Yeah,
phenomenal.
we even got some horses and went squatching on horseback.
So what is your opinion of that then? Do you think that, I know that bears usually will avoid horses when people are on horseback. It's very rare to encounter a bear because they know if there's horses, there's people, that association. Do you think that the Sasquatch would be the same way, that they would smell or hear the horses coming a long ways away and avoid them? Or did you go in terms of scouting and looking for sign kind of approach on that?
When we went out, we were looking for signs as we went.
Yeah. So you can cover a lot more ground that way, but you're probably not going to see one.
Right. Well, we did see a turkey, and I lost count of how many babies she had.
Oh,
But my horse heard that turkey before I did, and his ears went up and his head turned, so he was very alert. So if there was something around, the horses would have alerted us to it. But I do think Bigfoot will watch from a distance.
yeah,
They've been known to do that.
I would agree. Yeah, they're known to be incredibly curious and that we're their entertainment, so to speak.
Yeah, they watch us as much as we want to watch them,
Mm-hmm.
and especially with kids.
Right. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many account stories I've heard that they'll be, observed in a tree line watching children play and stuff.
That's
And
kind of disturbing.
I know it is. Right. It's because you don't know what their motivation is. Is it just idle curiosity, like, oh, look at those cute little ones, or is it wonder how they're on bread, how they taste on bread?
Crunchy with ketchup.
Right.
I think that's a lot of curiosity, wondering if those little ones are going to grow hair.
Oh yeah. They look kind of like.
Are
us.
they cold?
Yeah.
What are they wearing?
Right. No, that's probably true. That's a great thought, and I'd love for it to be more of a gentle observation. But it certainly there are tales out there of the opposite being the case. I think it was from David Politis' Missing 411, where he references a story of
Right.
the dad playing hide and seek with his little 3-year-old, and he saw the kid go behind a bush, and just seconds later he went over there to find him, and he wasn't there, and the kid disappeared. And
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. That's one of the creepier ones.
right, yeah, and some hikers several miles away saw what looked like a Bigfoot carrying a small child. So that's just a heartbreaker. Ugh.
Yeah, that's one of the few ones that actually give me chills.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's really creepy. But I guess, like you said before, there's the whole spectrum of personalities in these other creatures as well as there are in people. I mean, you can walk down the street in any town, and 90% of the people you'll bump into are fantastic, upstanding people. But there'll be that small percentage of people that you just feel like you want to stay away from. And so I can't imagine the animal kingdom would be any different,
Yeah,
or
no doubt.
the cryptid kingdom, as it were.
Yes, I agree with that
Mm-hmm.
because uh, their personalities vary. I imagine just like ours do. So you might get one that just takes a disliking to people, and that would be the end of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Very,
I've
very.
often wondered sometimes if, like people, that they have mental illnesses.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
that is a good question. Oy.
That's a
Because
good.
sometimes we see certain disorders in the ape family,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good point.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that, but it is.
where some apes are more highly intelligent than others, and some are more aggressive than others, especially when
Oh,
it's chimpanzees.
yeah. Very true. Well, Robin, we're
And
moving up.
with the bonobos, where um, they're not violent
Mm.
like regular chimpanzees are. The bonobos are
Right.
quite malevolent.
Right. Exactly.
So
Well,
we have two chimps, two of the same families, and one is less aggressive.
very true. Very true. We're going to take our first break here, ladies and gentlemen. So stand by. We'll be back, of course, with Mrs. Robyn Moonshadow for more of this exciting discussion of the world of cryptids and little people. So don't go away. We'll be right back. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal Friday edition. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I'm thrilled you're here with us. And, of course, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard, and we are burning the Friday night away with Mrs. Robyn Moonshadow, who is with us tonight to discuss pygmies, proto-pygmies, and little people, and Bigfoots, goblins. I got to unmute you, Don.
Oh, there I am. Sorry.
That's awful quiet. I liked it. No, I'm just kidding.
I have the power.
So welcome back to the show, Robyn. Thanks for being here.
Thanks again for having me.
Of course, it's an absolute pleasure. And again, it's such a gem to have found a researcher such as yourself who is involved with these topics, because it is tough to find information that, I don't know, I've looked and looked and looked for many times prior to finding you on how to do shows about this topic.
Yep.
And the information is so scattered and disparate, and it's buried in a lot of legends and lore, and to try to filter through all of that to come up with a cohesive show is really tough. So when we found you, I was just like, oh my God.
We were so excited.
Thank God. So how did you do it? How did you weed through all of this, many, many different informations out there, and how did you come to any cohesion with it?
Well, I was writing for another blog at the time, and I'd gotten an email from a man named David. And I don't know his last name, but if he does watch it and it's him, email me back. I'd like to say thank you. He asked me if I knew about the little people in the Arctic. Now, I had heard about them, but I didn't research them. And they're called the urchin rack, which is a name to describe all of the little people as a whole.
Oh, okay.
And when I started looking into them, then I started getting more leads, and I've just been lucky that one lead has led to another. Now, I have had to dig quite deep a few times and talk to people from different reservations, and I'm lucky that they will talk to me. Like I said, I am a First Nations Métis, but sometimes they're still leery about it because they can be very protective of their little people. This is a part of their traditions.
Right. Absolutely.
And they're not really sure of your intent, but as soon as I tell them, I'm just researching them, I don't want to hurt them, I'm just fascinated by them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting an echo. Huh.
Robyn, do you have your speakers on?
Yeah, I have my speaker on.
Okay, yeah, it's coming back through the mic.
Yeah, we're getting a bit of a... Here,
That's
let
okay.
me fix that.
All right.
There we go. How is that?
Much better, I think.
There we go.
Yeah, a little bit better anyway. It's workable now.
So,
Yeah, that's good.
So Robyn, one of our chatters in YouTube, Sam, she asked a question, and it has to do with deforestation. She says, so what do pygmies do when deforestation occurs? As morbid as it is, do they ever find bodies? Or do the little people just relocate and start again? Or do they stand up and say, we're not going to take it? What do they do there? What are their
Well,
habits?
they live underground, but I can tell you they don't like deforestation. They will relocate if they have to, but I have no doubt they have a tunnel system under the ground, because that is their home.
Right.
Now, I know two stories. A little boy in Oregon, and this was back when the 1920s, I believe. I might be off on the date. His parents were hired to come and clean up the debris from the trees that they were cutting down, like the extra pieces and I guess what they would consider garbage trees. And he was out playing by the creek, and he saw two little men come across the creek wearing purple and a cane and come over and see what the damage had been done to the trees by cutting them down. And the little guy just shook his head and he was disgusted, and then he walked back across the creek. The little boy went and got his parents, and showed him the tracks. Now the parents didn't follow the tracks, but as this little boy got older, he believes that they were just disgusted by what was being done.
Right.
Uh, Now the other story that I had heard, and it's most recent, I do believe it was 2015, where loggers were taking the logs out on trucks, and these goblin-like creatures attacked his truck,
Oh,
Wow.
and they were hanging off the logs and banging on the window, and it scared this man pretty bad. And they stayed on that truck until they were almost out of the forest, and then they just disappeared. I'm assuming they jumped off,
wow.
but that trucker will not go back in that area again.
Yeah, imagine that might wreck your enthusiasm for the job after that. I don't know what they look like.
Yeah.
These goblins. What would they look
Oh,
like?
these ones were a greeny gray color
Oy.
and quite straggly, but really strong.
Okay. Yeah, that would change
So
things.
yeah, that was definitely something to do with them wrecking the trees.
Wow.
Interesting.
I think that since that's their home, I can understand the outrage. I certainly that's one thing that's going on a lot up here in the north of Idaho. Of course, there's a lot of logging and clear cutting, and it's just an ugly thing. I don't know. I mean, I know that a lot of people rely on that for their livelihood, and I get it. I know it's something we've done, since we've been here, but I certainly hope we can figure out different ways of doing it, because it's just really sad to see these pristine mountains, and then you come back in the next season after they've been logged, and they're just these
bald.
they're just these scraggly, sad looking hills with these piles of brush on them that are just enormous, and it's just tragic to me. So and I don't live in the forest, but I live around the forest, and I know how crappy that makes me feel. So I just imagine even more so if that was, my home and somebody was systematically wiping it out, that it would probably be pretty painful.
Yeah, I'd have an issue with it as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Gosh.
geez.
Do they replant? Do they replant the trees?
Yeah, I don't know, Don. You're more familiar with this area than I am. Do the loggers
There
replant?
is maybe not the loggers, but I know there is. Once they do, I think it's the next season. They have a company go out and put out seedlings. Replant. Most of the time. Now, I was driving. When you're driving back into town from my house, Brent,
Yeah.
and you look up there and you see Schweitzer and you see all the mountains there, and if you look to the left or right, though, you'll notice that there's a half-bald mountain on one side and a half-bald mountain on the other, where they've gone up and this literally just kind of shaved one side of its head and just left it there, and they're just it's just disgusting.
It really is.
But they're cutting ways for power lines and cell towers and whatever else they're putting up, Gwen towers, whatever. So who knows? I mean, but they do. I know Weyerhaeuser over on the coast does a replanting. So
well, that's good. I mean, at least they're
but
replenishing it.
It
But
takes
yeah,
20 years to get a good tree.
it does, and I think this is a real side discussion, I suppose. But
It is, yeah.
I hope that they start looking into hemp and hemp as a, it takes 90 days to grow versus
Right.
2 decades, and you get so much more, and I
It
don't know.
provides so much more too. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, you can cut it, have a party, and then make stuff.
I'll interject. It's nice clothes.
Yeah,
It makes nice clothes.
It does, yeah, exactly. It's a pretty multi-purpose kind of plant. So hopefully that's the wave of the future. But I know that these beings seem to be everywhere, but it seems like another problem researching them is learning the myriad of titles that they're given depending on the region.
Right.
I know that I had never heard the word before, but I heard the word duende on a radio show, and I started searching the word duende, which is Duende. It's a Spanish term, and then suddenly I could find more information, but that was one of the big roadblocks I ran into, Robyn, when I was trying to research them, is just that you can find a certain amount when you look up gnomes. You can find a certain amount when you look up Pukwudgie, but there are about 100 or so different titles that these things are referenced by. Was that a problem for you as well?
Just at the beginning,
Okay.
and then I started reading their descriptions.
Oh,
Well, a
okay.
gnome looks like this, so a gnome is a gnome. But then you don't realize until when you get more into it from the description that leprechauns also fall into the gnome family.
Okay. Okay.
And red caps, of course. We discussed that last time about red caps, which I call the anti gnomes. And I really think they are the duende as well. I think they have a mental disorder of some sort.
Oh, okay. Now that.
Because they are bold. And I know in Mexico they were a problem for a while.
Mhm.
They would come out in daytime and stick sticks in people's bicycles as they were riding by. They would throw things at people. I know it's
Oh,
funny.
yeah, it's kind of odd. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
funny and disturbing at the same time.
yeah, so for them to actually come out and do those kind of things when we just got done talking, most of the time they don't want to. But like you said, 90% of people, are fine. But there's always that percentage that is up to mischief, if not worse. And so it's just kind of odd because you wouldn't expect to see something like that pop out at you and stick a stick in your tire as you're going down and just kind of endo over. Those would be incredible stories. I mean, really, honestly.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they're mischief makers. I know there was a house in Pennsylvania, and both owners had problems with these red caps.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the puckwudgies as well are real aggressive. I've heard.
Oh yes, puckwudgies are terrible. I think that they are one of the top worst little people. I mean, then you have the trolls, of course, and they're bad enough.
Right.
But
Right.
they're just kind of even the old tales say that trolls are kind of stupid. So yeah,
They're the turkeys of the little people family.
yeah, we ain't related to them.
Now, what about things like
That's from the other one in the family. Yeah.
what about things like dwarves? Now, the historical description of dwarves, legendary, I guess, is that they are these subterranean living beings that carve their lives out of mines and are very diminutive as well, but stocky and broad. Are they an actual race as well, or is this just
Flight of fancy.
right?
I do believe that there are dwarves. I know that when Henry Hudson, and we know Henry Hudson through history, through Hudson Bay and
Sure.
um, sorry, the lake that's named after him. Now, when he first came down, he was docked near the Catskill Mountains
Hmm.
in New York, and they were seeing lights up in the mountain one night. So him and his men went up to check to see what these lights are. They had heard stories of these little dwarves um, being able to make things.
Hmm.
So they went up to see what was going on, and they found these little dwarves. Oh, about a dozen of them, and they were making their own beer.
Huh.
Wow.
So
Okay.
the dwarves offered them some beer, and they must have put hallucinogens into beer because Henry Hudson said that his men started to look and act like these dwarves.
Right.
Hmm.
So he gathered everybody up and took them back to the ship. But apparently, on certain nights, you can still see these lights and
Mm.
hear music.
Wow.
Well, no, that's an interesting thing, Robin. These lights that are reported in wildernesses around the world, could they very well be the same kind of light? That's just these little beings out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you have your phantom lights, of course, and little people do use lights. They
Okay.
use torches, and some even steal flashlights. I know the pains, the little people that are pains in California, they're little thieves, and they're just kleptomaniacs because they'll steal clothes off the line. They'll steal Christmas lights,
Wow. Okay. How do
pink
you spell that?
flamingos.
How do you spell pains? I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, pains, Pains.
Oh, okay. So they are literally pains in the.
There are literally chains. Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
So when I was reading about these accounts, I was like, why would they want to steal like holiday lights? What's the purpose of that? And I couldn't figure anything out except that they're kleptos. I don't know.
Could they?
Maybe they just.
Right. There have been movies through the age. Oh,
Go ahead.
there have been movies through the ages that uh, like the borrowers, of these little people that live in your house and things like that, and they use your electricity. But then there was the Spiderwick Chronicles, I think it was, about the trolls and the gnomes and things that you could see through that little round stone. Do you think that they might have figured out in some way how to use some of our utilities?
Oh, absolutely, because they are people.
Right.
Oh, that's funny.
And yeah, I think they could if they wanted to. If they were interested in it, yeah, they'd find a way.
Huh.
We know that gnomes are quite smart, so they might use electricity.
Huh.
If they lived under your house, they might be stealing your cable.
That's awesome.
No wonder I don't have any internet. They probably have one of my old
Just
phones down
thinking
there.
about that, yeah.
That's really cool.
I'd be like, hey, honey, I know where that spike in the internet's going now.
That's crazy.
That is funny though, and it's very interesting to think that they could be that adept. But Don's right. There are so many stories of people seeing these little beings in their homes, and I don't know if that's the same thing or not, because you would think if it was a little 2-foot person that they would have to have some access that you could find or could discover in order to see how they're getting in and out and stuff. But apparently they just kind of melt away. So I don't know if they're the same thing or not.
The one that I saw when I was little, like 9 years old, lived in the walls between my aunt and uncle's house.
Wow.
Yeah. Now he had a greenish color to his skin. He was a Nomaki.
Nomaki?
And yeah.
Okay.
And my cousins were aware that he was there because he used to steal their chips or their potato chips or chocolate bars, even Pepsis. If they left them on the floor, they'd be gone the next day.
Wow.
I saw him 3 times one summer, but I didn't see him after that. I know that he scared another cousin of ours really bad. We were outside playing with the dog, and he was peeking around. Like, he was only about 2 feet tall. And he was peeking around the corner at the house at us. And my cousin saw him, and he went screaming to his mother. I mean, we're talking like Niagara Falls tears.
Wow.
And it was really pale and everything. And we said, well, he's not going to hurt you,
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it was. Go ahead.
Can you address pixies? And I know you did on the last show that you were in here, but how do pixies differentiate from all of this?
Well, some people consider proto-pygmies and fairies all a part of the fairy family, because this goes back to a lot of Irish lore.
Mm-hmm.
That at one time they were everybody was the same size, and they just began to shrink.
Okay.
Because leprechauns and fairies are connected in Irish lore. Now, with what I consider proto-pygmies, they're over a foot high, and they also don't have wings.
Okay.
So anything under a foot, I would consider a little fairy type.
Okay.
And anything above, I would consider a proto-pygmy.
Okay. Now, do we have the little itty-bitty ones here in the U.S.? The under a foot ones?
Any fairies?
Yeah.
Yes, they are seen a lot. Like, I don't do a lot of fairy research, but I will take stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of groups that do some fantastic fairy research, and I pass them on, and they'll do the same for me. A couple winters ago, a friend of mine, well, he's a friend now, him and his little girl actually seen a fairy in a snowstorm.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, she was having a hard time flying, but, she didn't have winter clothes on.
Oh,
So it
geez.
makes me and makes me wonder that maybe winter doesn't cold doesn't affect them like it does with humans.
Right. Yeah. I wish it didn't affect me, but my God.
Yeah, no doubt
I
there.
know.
Oh man, every year winters are getting tougher and tougher. And I don't think the winters are any tougher than they've ever been. It's just I'm less tough.
Yeah, that's what old age does.
Yeah, I know, I know. But this
Just a word. Just a word. I used to be able to go snowmobiling
Mm.
exactly.
when yeah, and I can't do that now. I'll freeze.
Yeah, me too. I remember I was a kid. I'd be out. We grew up just it was in the south of Minnesota, but there was a ski a resort next to near our house, probably about 8 miles away, and they weren't enormous, mountain type of runs, but they were decent. And I remember out there, skiing in 20 below with just jeans and a thick sweater and a hot fingers gloves and a good jacket, no hat, just jeans and long johns, and that was it. And I can't even go get the mail now dressed like that. I don't know what happened, but I'm just a real wimp now.
Yeah, I remember in high school I would be able just to wear some high top running shoes and a heavy sweater, and I was good to go all winter.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, that's good.
Can't do that. I'd end up in the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, be on a respirator and stuff. Yeah, terrible stuff that's getting old. But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to digress into that. But it's just something that just continually occurs to me. And as the calendar keeps marching forward, that's what's exactly on my mind is like, how many shopping days left till Christmas, and how long do I get to wear my shorts? you know, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um,
In another fairy story I got came from Pennsylvania, and the woman was driving, and it was a wet day, and she saw like a little flash just out of the corner of her eye, and she slowed down, and she saw like a little fairy with wings in the ditch, and it was hurt.
oh, I think you got clipped by a car or something.
I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah. Right.
when she was explaining it to me because it was holding its arm, she said, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing, and it might have had a broken wing, she said, and it reminded me of when dragonflies get hit by cars.
Yeah.
Right. No. No.
Right, the effect that would have on a little person.
So she had no compunction about stopping and rendering any kind of aid. She was like, "Oh my God, that's a fairy. I'm out of here." Or,
No, she wasn't frightened. She was more surprised,
okay.
but she didn't know what to do,
Right.
which we find, a lot of times with these types of encounters, people just don't know what to do because they're in just disbelief of what they're looking at. The eye rubs and it's still there.
Yeah. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would like to think that I would stop and try to help if I could. But you're right. Once you're in a situation like that, you're all the way out of your comfort zone. You're just seeing something that
It's just unbelievable.
yeah, it just doesn't seem like it could possibly be there. So how do you do that? I don't know. But my inner altruistic side says, "Oh, you got to help it." But then my
Yeah.
reality side says, "What if they sting? What if they're what if they
bite.
they don't like people?" And yeah, and maybe help's coming. Maybe they get their own ambulance or something. I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. But that is very, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, even growing up, my mother told me you have to watch out for fairies because they will bite.
Ooh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, it was my mother that was Irish and Métis, so I got some good stories from that side of the family.
There you go.
I'll bet that's quite a melting pot for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
Robyn, we got somebody asking in the chat room. She's asking, is there? Well, let's ask this first. Um, has any evidence or any idea about blood typing or anything about proto pygmies come across? Do we know anything about their genetics? Are they? We know that they're humans in the sense that they're humanoids and everything, but somebody's asking specifically if somebody could have some kind of proto pygmy blood in them, as part of their makeup.
Well, going back to the beginning with First Nations and Native Americans, we say the little people and the giants were here when we got here.
Mm-hmm.
So they've always been here. But there are stories of interbreeding with, well, regular sized people,
Okay. Hey, Robyn,
like the
can I interrupt you there? Because we're about 10 seconds out of our break. We will definitely continue that thought on the other side, ladies and gentlemen.
Definitely.
But we are joined tonight by Mrs. Robyn Moonshadow, who is here to talk about proto-pygmies, pygmies, and everything all the way up to giants. So we will be right back. Don't go away. Take a couple minutes, grab a refreshment, get a drink, use the loo, and be back in 2 minutes. Don't go away.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger pours inside me as their lies keep falling apart. Just make sure that you're well fed. I'm not broken yet.
Frequency Radio. This looks extraordinarily bad.
They linger in a perpetual dream state, a nightmare from which they cannot wake. I can't see you, Mommy. Where are you? I've never sensed anything like it. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeist are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances have fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal, and I am Brent Thomas, your host, joined by my good friend, Mr. Don Longbeard. And tonight we are welcoming our special guest tonight, Mrs. Robyn Moonshadow, who is here to discuss proto-pygmies and gnomes and goblins and Bigfoots and giants and anything in between. It's been a fascinating discussion, so before I go any further, I should get her on screen so we can see her as well. There you are.
There she is.
There you are.
Hi, Robyn.
And you'll notice she has
Hello again.
a nice gnome in the background as well, and that is apparently George. Is that right?
George, the light bearer.
That's George.
That's
Yep.
George. Yep. So he's
Yep.
he's shining a light in there. But welcome back to the show, and thank you so much again for being here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely, you can come back whenever you want because again, you're a gem. Just before the break, you were talking about what was it?
blood typing. Yeah, we went back to
the possibility of interbreeding or any historical or legendary accounts of such things. And I'm sorry I had to interrupt you for the break, but if you want to continue your thought, the floor is yours.
Yes, there are some stories of interbreeding with little people, like there are with giants.
Oh.
So yes, it is quite possible that there is something, but for a blood test, I don't think so.
Okay. So there's nothing documented in regards of that, but there are stories that it has happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Through Native Americans, there are stories.
Okay.
Now, when we find out more about Homo floresiensis, then we might be able to get further with that topic.
So now I did see that article that you guys had posted on the Strange Realms group, and I thought that was interesting. I read through it, and allegedly near the cave where Homo floresiensis was discovered, there is also a village of pygmy people. And it was very interesting to see that those people don't have any relation genetically to the Homo floresiensis. So, in other words, Homo floresiensis, ladies and gentlemen, was alleged to live about 10,000 years ago on a small island in Indonesia called Florensis Island. Is there I think it's Flores Island or Florensis, and they've since included that on the family tree of all of the creatures of the history. But in that same island, and these things, the Homo floresiensis are about 3 foot tall, and they're referred to as the Hobbit people. What's interesting is that literally modern day, near that cave where these bones were found, is an actual village of pygmy people. That being very short by about 4'7" inches is the average height, but they can't find any genetic markers that would be in relation. So the interesting thing is that two different types of peoples have lived on this island, one modern day, one ancient, and it has created this diminutive size in both of them, that both of them have responded by becoming small. I thought that was really interesting.
That's a perfect example of people being little naturally, as opposed to island dwarfism.
Right.
Yeah, because one.
Yeah,
Hmm.
where the people that live there probably have island dwarfism, and that's why they're so short. With the Hobbit,
Hmm.
they were little naturally.
Right.
They didn't develop that over thousands of years to fit their environment. They were just naturally that way.
Right, and very interesting. And I often wonder if the Hobbit, the Homo florensis, is actually going to be an ancestor of the orang pendek, which is still rumored to be in Indonesia, running around, especially on the island of Sumatra. So it'll be interesting to see if they're ever able to recover some DNA of that, if it turns out to be some kind of relation.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
We know it could possibly be because through evolution, science tells us that we're all related.
Hmm.
But again, we need the DNA evidence and the proof. Even a tissue sample, because I wouldn't want the orang pendek hurt,
Right.
because I think they were a very small population, so not very many of them are left.
Right. I would agree. And that's kind of the tragedy of any of these things, I think, is that they exist out there, and I do believe they do. I think there's a whole catalog of creatures and fauna that we have not discovered as of yet, but I think that once they are discovered, we have a tendency to destroy, everything we touch, and if they've chosen our absence, then I would rather they remain undiscovered and live peacefully or however they choose to than to be discovered and be wiped out by our curiosity.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that with Bigfoot as well. I don't want them hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't know how many are out there, I think it's probably more than a lot of people think.
Mm-hmm.
But just in case.
Right. Exactly. No, that's an interesting point. And I don't know. I think that you're probably following this about as closely or more closely than I do. But it seems to me that, either one or two things is going on. And I want to ask your opinion of this because what I have noticed is that certainly the reporting of sightings of Bigfoot is certainly up a lot, but is that a result of an increasing population, or is that a result of it not being socially offensive to discuss and to acknowledge, or is it both?
I think it's a combination of three things now.
Okay.
I think maybe their populations are up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but we don't know for sure. It is now more socially able to talk about it. Like even when I was a kid, you couldn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't even talk about ghosts without someone thinking you were nuts. But things have gotten so much better.
Right.
And the third part is everybody has phones now.
Right.
So we're able to communicate over long distances, so we hear more.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, you're right. That information is so much more accessible than ever before in history. That's a good point.
When I started this when I was a kid, my favorite spot was the library. Yeah, it was so hard to get anybody to talk to you about this. When my father would travel for work, and my mother and I would go with him. I'm the youngest of five by a lot of years, like by 9 years.
Oh, okay.
So of course I went with them, and we went up north, and I was actually able to get people to talk to me up there just because I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
And it was at the local restaurant. We were in Bancroft, and that's way up north, for like a week. And when people, adults actually, were hearing that there was this little kid looking for monster stories, they were delighted to tell me.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
The Bigfoot stories that came out of there, I had like 3 days of those. And then I got the albinos and the melanistic animals, of course, because genetically I think they're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
because they are so different and so rare. And again, we're seeing a lot more of those because people have phones now.
Right.
And it is my personal opinion that we will be seeing a lot more white animals and black animals because of environmental changes.
Oh.
As our winters get colder, we're going to see, especially in the colder areas, we're going to see a lot more darker animals.
Oh. Okay.
It's how they keep heat. And
Right.
in the hotter climates, we're going to see more white animals.
Sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually said this about 2 years ago, and now there's been a study uh, done on the snowshoe hare rabbits
Okay.
and how they're starting to change color earlier in the year.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay. I hadn't heard of that, but that's very interesting. Is it because of the length of winter is longer now, or what? Why would they do that?
sorry,
Is it because of
say
the?
again. I didn't hear you.
Is it because the length of winter is longer now, or why would they change earlier? What are they attributing that to?
That's because our winters are getting colder.
Oh, it's colder. Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes the winters come on really fast,
Yeah. And
and
they
they were afraid that uh, it was going to decrease their population because it makes them easier to see.
right. That's true. Very good point.
And they are adapting really well. And I read one story where birds' feathers are also changing colors.
Oh, okay.
Environmental changes, and where something might be bright red,
Uh-huh.
it's actually dulling down the red.
Okay. Very interesting.
Well, how do you think this is affecting the proto pygmies though? I mean, do you think because they live underground, because they live in warrens or burrows, are they affected as like the snowshoe rabbit?
I think it would affect them as it would us in if we still lived in like the 1800s and where we had to collect wood,
Hmm.
lived in the old ways,
Hmm.
where it was probably going to be harder for them to go out and forage.
Was it last time you were on that you told the story of somebody bumping into one that was cutting wood?
Yeah.
Wasn't that when you were on last time, or where did that come from, Don?
Yeah.
There is a story, and it's only a couple of years old, where there were firefighters doing controlled burns in California.
Oh, I remember
And
hearing
he
this.
cut down a tree, and there was a little person inside the tree really scared. He had jumped into the tree to get away from the fire.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that either.
Huh.
Yeah, and he was a Native American, so he knew to leave that little guy alone.
Oh, okay, okay. No, I had heard a story of apparently, and I think I heard this on Sasquatch Chronicles, Wes Germer's show. Somebody was talking. Every once in a while he'll do a show on little people, or the topic will come up. But apparently there was a guy fighting a forest fire in Washington State, and this might have just been a couple years ago. I don't recall now when it happened, but he was out, doing their, they were making their brake lines and stuff, and he there was this charred log or stump, and it had a hole next to it, and the firefighter apparently was right there, and apparently like 4 or 5 little people came from the hole, crawled out, looked at them, and then just went on their merry way away from there. And I was like, wow, what an account that is. But I was absolutely fascinated by that. That perhaps it was the fire was the much more threatening occurrence, more so than the fact that there was a person there. So they just said, "Screw it, let's go."
Yep, let's get going, yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, we see animals do that. When they're escaping forest fires and people are stopping so the animals can cross the road, they don't pay any attention to the people.
Right.
They just go from one side to the other.
Right.
So yeah, it could be that, exactly be that.
Yeah, the rules change.
Run for your life, no matter what, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but very interesting. Now, is there a specific region where these little people accounts? I know that Mexico seems to have a fair share of them, and they seem Well, I don't know if any of those videos that are on YouTube, those real grainy ones that are out there that seem to show gnomes or other small beings, but they seem kind of convincing, even though they're in poor quality. But I think the fact that they are poor quality to me is more believable because, obviously the phone technology is probably a couple generations back there anyway. But the other part that I find really compelling is that everybody and their brother doesn't have digital video editing software down there and, can make a decent hoax. So I'm seeing these videos and I'm like, maybe there's something to that. What have you seen these videos that are circulating from Mexico?
I've seen a lot of them.
Okay.
I go by what they look like. Some of them are too skinny to be. I know some of them look like the elf on the shelf.
Okay.
Yeah, I dismiss those ones because those little type of people, first off, they're too small.
Okay.
And they don't dress like that, or they don't wear those kinds of hats. But gnomes do wear pointed hats.
Right.
They come red and green, but that's for camouflage. You look at that and it looks like a mushroom.
Right.
So they can sit and you might walk by it. But there is one video that I believe above the others, and it's a bunch of boys.
Mm-hmm.
They were racing or driving their bikes, and a little guy just darts into the bushes.
Oh, yeah, that was in Indonesia, actually.
I looked that down and zoomed in on it, and they look like how they're supposed to look there.
Right. Yeah, that was Malaysia, I think, or Indonesia where that came out of.
Yeah, and they are quick.
Right.
That's what they have in common is that all these little people are fast, but they're lower to the ground, so they can go fast under gravity.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was a really great video, too. I saw that one as well. It's like this little, basically something running around in a loincloth. It was like, wow, if we're talking about the same video.
Yeah, it is. And that would be how the people used to dress thousands of years ago.
Right. And that is a tropical environment, so there wouldn't be any need for more layers.
Right.
They don't have the fashion concerns we have.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And it seems to be a natural fibers, which would be cooler and something that they could get their hands on.
Right. Yeah. I thought that video
and
was
he
amazing.
just seemed like he was there to see what the noise was about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the kids that were in that race that were like, the heck with the race, what was that?
Right. Yeah. And it just blew into those tall reeds and was just gone.
Just gone.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no way they could have followed it or anything. But I thought that video was amazing. But it's neat to see those things out there. But again, with all of those things, you're right. You've got to have a criteria to measure them by, because there are so many hoaxes and there are so many people trying to perpetuate hoaxing and I don't know if it's like they want their 5 minutes of fame or just to see how many people they can sucker, if that's like a game. But it's unfortunate because I think if
I would like to see more real little people videos,
right,
then I can study them.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that it's unfortunate that you really can't look at YouTube with any kind of without suspending belief completely, or mostly because you're expecting hoaxes more than you're expecting to see the real thing, and that's tragic.
Yeah, that's true. That is. Mm-hmm. And it is unfortunate. You have to look at everything skeptical.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So
and be fair about it to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I get that.
Even I've been guilty about getting a little overexcited about a few things. It's like wow, and then when you look again, it's like, darn it.
Yeah, we know how that goes. You find something that's really cool and you post it on your Facebook, and somebody comes back and says, "Did you look at the date on that?"
That might have just happened to me, Don. Is that what you're saying?
No,
is that what you're referencing, Don?
I'm not referencing anything.
Okay, so here's the story, Robyn, and basically it was pretty hilarious. But and I did correct it right away. But I was talking to Matt Knapp of Bigfoot Outlaws Radio. We were messaging back and forth, and we were talking about some technical things that he was working on and that I've been working on and what have you. And in my news feed, I see this article posted that somebody pulled 700 plus pound catfish out of the Mississippi. Now, in my own defense, I have grown up my whole life hearing the legends of the monster fish and the legends of the divers going down to set footings for the bridge and coming up absolutely terrified, refusing to go back into the water because of the size of the fish. And I've also heard this legend repeated about everywhere there's a bridge on a river town. But I was really excited because I do believe there's big things in there. I've snagged a few things that were so strong that they absolutely popped my 40-pound test line like it was, toilet paper. It was just no problem. So I know I hooked something big. So when I saw that, I was really excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, check this out. And what do? I go ahead and post it on my page because it's like, wow, check this out, guys. and then Matt messages me back and goes, did you check the date? And I did, and I'm like, hold on, I got to delete a post. It was dated April 1st. I'm like, oh, you got me. So, yeah, it happens to all of us. We get suckered in.
I actually have a story like that, and it's kind of funny. Back in February, it was in one of my news feeds about a giant crayfish.
Oh, okay.
Caught like 20 minutes away from me.
Oh, wow.
In the winter.
Ooh.
And I'm like, first off, crayfish don't get that big here.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And if they caught that, it would be in the news, and then I would get called.
Yeah, right.
So then I went on. So I was like, okay, well, I'll play along with this. And I went on and I started looking up the names of these people that supposedly caught this crayfish, and like they don't exist. And the person at such and such a university, they don't exist. And neither does the university in this area.
Oh, no. Nice. Well,
And then the next time I saw that, it was in a different place.
Oh, funny.
This time was up in Quebec somewhere.
So they changed the
I'm like,
location.
here we go, kid. Just change it around. And I'm laughing. And of course, I have to say, this place doesn't exist. I already saw this last year.
Oh,
it's just impossible for crayfish to get that big here.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure they have a genetic imperative to only grow to such size. Right. But if if there's a reactor nearby, it might be possible. I don't know.
Fukushima.
Yeah. You never know. But go ahead, Don.
Well, I was gonna kind of steer us back because I had a question that's been rolling around my head for a couple days now because I knew we were going to talk to you. What are the differences between like an urban proto-pygmy and more of the rural proto-pygmy? I mean, the ones that live in towns and cities as opposed to ones that live in. Is there a specific type that would live closer or farther away, and what would there be? Their motivation. I don't know.
First off, it'd be easier to live in a city. You could find food easier or steal food.
Sure.
Gnomes probably would live closer to cities. Like they would live under a house, I imagine, and they are family oriented.
Okay.
And the leprechaun types of gnomes, they assert themselves to certain families for generations. So they would say if a family that they had asserted themselves to move from the UK to America, they would follow them.
Wow. No, I think you brought that up on the last show that there are legends of them coming over on some of the boats back in the day.
Oh yeah, they've been seen on boats. Mm-hmm. Like when the Europeans first started coming over here, the gnomes were coming over.
Huh.
Wow.
They were seen at shipwrecks. Now, if they were a part of the shipwreck, I don't know, or maybe they were scavenging.
Oh.
They could have been looking for somebody.
Okay.
And maybe they were, I don't know, it sounds funny, but maybe they were expecting some of their relatives to come over on that ship.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I wonder that too. How civilized are they? Do they have their own civilization? Do they have their own, for lack of a better reference I don't have, let's just say that, you watch Harry Potter and they have this whole world that exists around ours, but we're completely unaware of. Could there be something similar for these beings? And I assume in the cases of gnomes, they're legendarily incredibly intelligent. Leprechauns are incredibly intelligent. I would guesstimate that it would be near human intelligence, if not, even above us. I don't know, but could they have their own societies, their own infrastructures built all around of our world?
Oh yeah, I believe with gnomes that is the case, that they have their own society and it goes on without us knowing about it.
Right. Yeah. So now
The other one that lives in an urban area are trolls. So they kind of live everywhere, but trolls are scavengers and they're habitual hoarders.
Okay.
And they'll eat just about anything and collect just about anything, and they stink, and they do live under bridges.
I was just going to ask
They'll
you.
live in old scenes, wherever.
Wow. We're heading to the break. It's coming up to our last break of the night, ladies and gentlemen. I just heard the bell, but we'll be back in just a couple minutes with more of Robyn Moonshadow here on the Paranormal Portal. Don't go away.
to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
And welcome back. My God, it's really loud. I'm not sure what's going on. Jeez. Are you hearing that, Don?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. The hell is that noise? Whoa, there it goes.
There it goes.
All right, better. It was like a rushing river in my ear. Okay, much better, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the last half hour of our show. There's a little bit of line noise. We are having to do the show at the mercy of Skype, which is always an interesting event at any point because the sound quality on Skype is usually decent, but every once in a while you get noisy lines, and that certainly is the case tonight. So I do apologize about the sound quality, ladies and gentlemen. It's just, it is what it is. Not much I can do about it. And I'm here, of course, with my good friend and co-host, Don Longbeard, and we are joined by our special guest tonight, Robyn Moonshadow, who is here to talk about all things little people, big people, giant people, and everything in between. So we are on the last half hour here, Robyn. How's it going for you so far?
Good. How's it going over there? You got a poltergeist or something?
We always have a poltergeist.
In the Skype?
Yeah, we had it roared at, it was just really, really loud. Could you hear it on your end?
I did. And I was thinking,
Don, is your microphone?
Change the screen.
Oh, yeah, I should, huh? I should get her on screen.
Yeah, there she is.
There she is.
Back again.
Sorry, I sometimes forget myself. I'm a little out of practice because, of course, I had last week off, and it's like, I don't know. I'm a creature of habit. I'm a person that has to repeat the same things in order to remember the same things. And if something happens like last week, I was in Minnesota doing my father's memorial with my family, and then to come back after a week, it's like, I don't know. I'm forgetting things that shouldn't be forgetting, but it happens. It's such as life here on the portal.
Yep.
So we have covered a whole lot of ground tonight, but this idea of these beings, these creatures coming over and remaining in our midst and traveling in our midst, and is just fascinating to me. And I love the romantic idea that they could have their own infrastructure, that they could have their own society that's built, with their own rules or whatever. To me, that's just fascinating as hell.
It is. It's a little scary when you realize that might be going on, because it's like a colony of ants, right? You're aware that they're there, but you're not completely sure about what's going on, unless you watch Discovery Channel. But
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, what are their motives? But it seems to me that they just, if they were up to no good, we would probably know that they're up to no good, other than being mischievous or being little pains in the butt from time to time. I think for the most part, their presence is just kind of benign. They just want to have their lives and their deal and leave us alone. I would think.
Yeah, I believe that they go about their daily business, not bothering about us one way or the other, and we go about ours, not bothering about them one way or the other. Right.
Well, I mean, notwithstanding the fact that most people don't believe that they're even here, which is, to me, is a tragedy. But I guess people like that kind of existence, and that's fine. But I love the idea that our world has so many layers and that there's still mystery and wonder. To me, that's exciting. But of all these, we had talked a little bit about Mexico, but in the U.S., is there one region that seems to jump out as more active for things like gnome sightings than others?
Pennsylvania. A lot of odd things go on in Pennsylvania. Well, we have the little people in Pennsylvania. We have the giants and the mounds in Pennsylvania. And there are a lot of ghost sightings in Pennsylvania. And, of course, we have Gettysburg, of course.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that Ohio is pretty off the charts. We have a listener from there as well, and good friend Dee.
Ohio is another place, yep.
Okay, so do you find that it correlates with paranormal activity as well, that wherever
it does, and Bigfoot as well.
Okay. Now,
I know that they've been seen in the Ohio Valley.
Oh, okay.
Quite a bit over the years.
Wow. Do you think that has to do with the fact that they seem to go together? Does that have to do with some form of convergence of ley lines, perhaps, and that there's more natural energy in these places where they seem to all be multiplied? I don't know if
Yeah,
that makes
it
sense.
does. It does seem to be that way with ley lines. Like strange things do go on at ley lines.
Right. And it seems to be this
Right.
energetic
We have
network.
that. Right. It's the natural energy. So
Mm-hmm.
things are drawn to there. Even people are drawn to there and they don't even know it. They don't know why they go to a certain place. And there's a natural ley line there. Just beautiful natural energies.
Right. Yeah, that's what occurs to me is that, I know that certainly there seems to be a pulse to the earth in the form of these ley lines, and that, obviously our ancestors thought so because of things like Stonehenge and other ancient sites are all built on these, amazing convergences of ley lines and very sacred spaces. But it seems that the paranormal gets more energy from these places as well, and therefore is more prevalent, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's drawn to it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would agree. Um, that is really interesting. Now, what was it? No, giants. We had talked a little bit about getting into giants. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with what is it, the beast at Kandahar or whatever it's referred
Kandahar
to.
giant.
Kandahar giant. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Over in Afghanistan, where there's allegedly a special forces unit brought down this 12 plus foot
Red-bearded giant.
red-headed, red-bearded, just ferocious giant. I've heard of a few cases where people claim to still be citing these, but what do you think of that account? First of all, do you think there could be any merit to it?
I'm on the fence about that account.
Okay.
Because he is just a bit too classic giant. He has red hair. He had the 6 fingers, the 6 toes. He was aggressive. He had a club.
Right.
But is it possible? Yeah, because he is in the region where the clan of the Nephilim come from.
Oh, okay.
So I'm on the fence about it.
Well, go into that. Go into the clan of the Nephilim and go from there. Is that like the motherland? Is that what you're saying?
No, giants seem to come from everywhere. I know there's a few theories that do come up that maybe they migrated here after the flood or something. But again, we go back to giants and little people as well have always been here.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And they look different.
Okay.
With the clan Nephilim, of course, it's the classic word of Nephilim, but that's just the clan name. Not every giant is a Nephilim.
Okay.
Oh.
We have Goliath. He was part of the Nephilim clan. His brother and his, I do believe he had 3 sons. They were all giants.
And you and I talked about this a little bit on Facebook, but how tall was Goliath?
It's a little bit debatable because of how they measured cubits.
Okay.
But as for giant-wise, he was only about 9 feet tall.
9 feet. Okay. Wow.
Now, when David, of course, when he grew up, he was over 6 feet, so he was quite tall. Okay. Where, back in those days, somebody tall was 5 feet.
Right.
So he was still tall.
Right.
But in those days, he would be considered a giant. Now, his brother was bigger, and we do have some bigger giants from that area. Was it Gog?
Oh, Gog and Magog.
Was like 12 feet tall.
Okay.
And he was massive, like massive.
Oh, okay. Is that?
And something else that I find interesting too is you never hear about women giants from that area.
Oh, that's true. Now that you mention it, it's like
and then you come over here, and then you start hearing male and female giants. Well, giantess.
Okay. Now it was also on Sasquatch Chronicles that I heard this account as well, and this was in terms of the classic red-haired giant. But apparently there was this retiree who was a lifelong hunter, and he wrote in to tell about his story. But essentially, he was up in the wilderness, in the mountains where he lived, and I can't recall exactly where he was. I thought it was Montana, but I'm not sure. But he was up in his tree stand, and he heard this thumping sound and turned to see what he described as about a 15-foot tall man with red hair, a beard, and walking up the mountainside. And at that day, he claims, and if there's any authenticity to this, I can't speak to it, but he claims that that's the last day he'll ever hunt in his life, because it absolutely disturbed him to such a level that this was there, that it was out there. And I understand that. I mean, I understand that whole idea, but do we see mentions of those red-haired giants other than that, and other than the famous cave that they were trapped in and burned, smoked out by the who was it, the Pawnee, or who smoked out those, what is it, the place that I'm thinking of?
Lovelock Cave.
Lovelock Cave, yes, thank you. Now,
Yes.
outside of those two instances, the one I just mentioned in Lovelock Cave, is there any other accounts of giants in more recent history?
That story of Lovelock Cave is something I grew up being told.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So before it came really popular in the last few years, I've known about it since I was just a little girl.
Oh.
It was a story that my grandmother, great-grandmother, passed on.
Wow. Is that your
down to us? So yeah.
Was your tribe involved in that? Is that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But of course, we pass on story through oral traditions.
Right.
So someone would have told her about this account, and it would have gotten passed on.
And they did.
Yeah, I'm really far away from who my people were. My people are Chiricahua Apache.
Oh, okay. And is that a northern tribe of Apache, or what does Chiricahua mean? I guess I don't know.
My great-grandmother would have been a part of Geronimo's tribe.
Oh. That's...
And she was actually born in what they considered the jail.
Oh, wow.
And when she got older, they just headed this way because she did not want to be on a reservation. And she had two sisters with her. Now, the two sisters live in Detroit. But she married an Irishman who hadn't been over here for very long, and then they came over to Canada.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Huh.
So
go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking about the Snake Mound in Ohio, and I was thinking about the mounds that have been found throughout that area. How and there's a lot of talk about the Smithsonian, and things going on with them, that they had a lot of evidence, but for some reason it's either not there, or it was misplaced, or something like that. But let's not go on that. But what kind of evidence has been documented and found, along our breadbasket north up in the, just west of you?
Oh, there's with the Snake Mountain, the Snake Mound, that apparently was a hoax, that no giant came out of that one.
Okay.
That giant that you're talking about came out of another mound. So and they were regular sized skeletons.
They were regular.
Regular sized skeletons. And I was digging into that and was kind of disappointed, because Snake Mound is kind of cool.
Right.
But finding giants in the mounds has been going on for hundreds of years. Like, even amateur archaeologists, even if they were to make a mistake and say, well, this is a mammoth bone, there is too much of it, too much evidence, and even just story-wise, to say that there's no giants. Right. There's even giants in New Zealand.
Oh, really?
Right, and we're not talking about a case of gigantism, because with all these stories, you not really hearing about young giants, you're hearing about older giants.
Huh.
So again, they are just big naturally.
Huh.
Now, we know that some skeletons of giants have been stolen throughout the years and taken by collectors.
Right.
Oh.
And then there are giants that are in the mounds that are found sitting up or under in chambers.
Really?
When I first started reading about the chamber giants, of course, I think Conan.
Right.
And how he found a sword.
Yep.
And I think, well, that is cool.
Uh-huh.
Even growing up, giants were a part of our oral history even more than little people were.
Really? Okay.
So it was just commonplace to yes, giants were real.
Now, do you believe that they
I
still are around?
Giants could be roaming around. I don't think that they would be 15 feet tall. I haven't found any accounts yet where they were that tall.
Okay.
Up to 12 feet has been the tallest that I found.
Okay. I'll have to see if I can find that link on the site over there to send to you, just so you can hear the account. I'm sure I've bastardized it pretty well, but I think the meat of it was there. But I remember the number 15 feet. But again, I wasn't there, so I can't speak to the authenticity of it. But
again, yeah. Because seeing something like that he might have been 12 feet tall, and seeing something like that maybe make him seem bigger. Like
Sure.
you, I wasn't there. I don't know what he saw.
Right. Do you think that they're still around, though? Do you think they're, and if they are they a subterranean race?
If they are around today, they would be away from us.
Right.
And we also know that at least 80%, like it's a high percentage of giants were cannibals.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Ouch. Yeah.
It's a very small percentage that weren't cannibals.
Eesh.
And they were, malevolent. And these ones would trade with Native Americans. We have some here as well, but they're further up north.
Wow.
Giant legends and tales. Mm-hmm. And again, we get both. We get the ones that eat people, and then we get the ones that are benevolent.
Huh.
that they would just, when people started coming here, that they would just go off and be on their own. And they would only come down to trade.
Okay.
And of course, First Nations and Native Americans killed a lot of these giants off because of their cannibalism.
Right. And by cannibalism, you mean they ate humans, not necessarily other giants.
Ate.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they seem to be family oriented, like clan oriented.
Okay.
Now I know the ones with the Lovelock Cave, that as big as they were, you would never hear them coming, and they would just snatch people right out of their houses.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's so terrible.
That's not scary at all.
Oh, just right out of nowhere. Like people would be gone in the middle of the night, and they would know that they were taken by the giants.
Wow.
Yeah, that is impressive.
And for anybody listening, if you don't know what happened to them, several tribes of Native Americans got together and trapped them in the cave and set the cave on fire and killed them.
Right. Yeah, they suffocated them. Yeah.
These ones were particularly nasty.
Now, wasn't there allegedly skeletons recovered from that cave?
The large skeletons were discovered by people collecting bat dung.
Huh.
Oh, okay.
So as they were scooping up the dung, they were finding the bones.
Jeez. Wow.
Now, since the cave is supposedly collapsed since then.
Oh, I bet it was. I bet it was collapsed, but I'm not so sure it was naturally collapsed. Yeah. Because there seems to be an agenda to erase that from history, from our knowledge. There's, of course, the stories of the Smithsonian grabbing giant bones and either destroying them or keeping them under lock and key away from public eye and I can't for the life of me imagine why. It was like, what would be the purpose to keep this knowledge secret?
It's actually one of the few things that I actually believe. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but there's too much of it. again, too much of it.
Uh-huh.
Now, I know Ivan T. Sanders, he looked into this.
Okay.
And he believed that the Smithsonian had done something.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But again, I'm with you, Brett, on this. Like, why would they do that?
Right. It's what do they hope to gain?
What's the big deal about all these giant bones? Why are they hiding them?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many cultural references to them being here, biblical references. Many religions have their stories of giants. So the whole idea of them being here or not, it certainly won't. It's not to protect people because our lore is already filled with it. Oh, there comes the noise again. Holy God. Whew. Oh, there, it's better. Okay. But I can't imagine what the agenda would be to keep it secret. And that's, to me, it seems like if they're going to go to all the trouble to do it, there must be a reason why. But, and usually people default to, well, they're protecting the rest of us. But we already acknowledge in our histories and stuff that it's out there. So what is the reasoning?
Yeah, it could be something that we don't know about and they do.
Right. That's true. And perhaps there's some genetic thing or, information that they want to test or do whatever. I don't know. It's just very weird. And again, I agree. It's, I'm not always conspiracy minded. I'm mindful of conspiracies. I'm mindful of the things people mention. And I consider those things, but I would like to believe that, there's more mundane explanations for a few of them. But this one has me just perplexed. It's like there's so many accounts of the Smithsonian swooping in Minnesota when some big bones were uncovered in one of the natural mounds there. The Smithsonian was called in, and the bones disappeared, and there's allegedly no record of them. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the end game? What does that accomplish? And I don't know. But it is really troubling.
Where people have actually seen the Smithsonian come and take them away.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and people who have no interest in it whatsoever, who were just there observing, seen them come and take this away.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so I don't know what the entire end game to that would be. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's definitely reported. So many people claim it.
If they've got something really good, I'd like to know.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It is, right?
Right. So I don't know. But we're about 3 minutes out to the end of the show, Robyn. Can you let people know how to stay in touch with what you're doing?
I have a blog to start, and it's strangerealms.net. I also have a Facebook group that is Strange Realms. And I just recently started the YouTube channel. People have been asking me, where are you going out and what are you doing? Mm-hmm. So I started that for everyone. And it's, again, Strange Realms. Keep it going so people can find it.
Absolutely. And your videos from your Adirondack trip are up there?
They are up there. And Dwight Campbell has been doing some of his own. So we're put the videos together, and you could almost see the whole picture.
Oh, fantastic.
And you'll get some of my little outings, even if it's just something simple, because I know not everyone can get out to do what we do. Mm-hmm. And I'm also going to a very large area up here in my province, Algonquin Park. Oh. There's been 2 sightings of proto pygmies up there, so I'm going there at the end of the month.
Fantastic.
And a rather large Bigfoot with a strange face. Oh. He's looking a little bit more ape-like. Now, I don't know if this is a hoax, but it looks good, and I'm going to go find out.
Wow. Well.
And then September, I'm working on the blog, and then in October we're going to a haunted location again in Kingston at Old Fort Henry.
Wow.
Oh, cool. Well, you're plenty.
I know
busy.
Things get crazy there at 4 a.m. in the morning.
It's that 3 to 4 a.m. seems to be the hot times for paranormal research. That's for sure.
That's true.
It is too. Yeah, it's not like the witching hour like everybody thinks.
No, it's definitely not. 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. is definitely when it all jumps off. But thank you so much, Robyn, for being here and taking your time. And we can't thank you enough for staying up late with us. And we hope you'll come back again.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Well, talk about proto pygmies 24/7.
Well, we'll take you up on that offer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight, and stick around for Into the Microcosm with Jimmy Jean coming up here on TFR Live, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream, and if you're watching us on YouTube, well, you'll have to wait till tomorrow night. Don and I will be back to continue the portal, and we'll see you then. So love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you, Robyn. Good night.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
Okay, good night.